day. I'm
Good
Tiffanie Lanelle,
day. Welcome to This is America. I am Alex Haynes.
and I am Tiffanie Lanelle. How was your weekend?
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. Relaxing. I did what I want to do, and I don't know how to say that any better. Um,
Okay.
I try to do that as much as possible, like 99.6% of the time.
I think we all should. I think we all should do what we want to
We
do.
all should, we all don't.
We all don't, but we should. We all have choices.
That's 100% true.
Yeah.
100% true. And anyway, short story. I had a great weekend. Didn't go far. Came right back, and again, that's it.
Okay. I also did what I wanted to do. I got my, as you can see, summertime hair because it's getting hot. And no,
It's 57 degrees, so
I think the high for today here is 80 or 80 something. I honestly don't know. Once I saw the 8, I said, well,
high
that,
today is 73. The low is 54.
I would take that. I think our low was in the 60s. I don't remember, but it's cool right now. When I let my dogs out this morning, it was had a little breeze to it. I was like, now you could actually stay right here. It's not going to do that, but Anywho,
I
uh
take 73 every day, so
I would also take 73 every day. It's not, it was happening here for a minute, but it's not happening here anymore. So, but we've got a good show today. I hope everyone enjoyed their holiday weekend. If for no other reason than maybe, hopefully, some of you
we
got.
should all enjoy weekends,
We should all enjoy.
especially when they are elongated.
For some, I know some people had to work yesterday. I definitely got some work done yesterday, but when you're in media production and things like that, I don't think your work ever ends. So, but I did
But it
to
but it
do
should though,
it
you know?
should, and I did take a break this weekend, and really just
I feel sorry for like okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
um, I didn't. I had all these grand plans for the weekend of things I was going to catch up on and do work in the house and all this other stuff. I basically sat and caught up on a bunch of shows. So everybody makes choices, but also,
Certainly. I mean, I had a things that I thought I was going to do that didn't happen, but I
and
did
that's
what I
okay.
wanted to do. But I also think that coming from a culture of hustle hard and work all the time, but I don't do that anymore. Like again, and I have said this, I'll beat it into the ground. I do things that make me happy, and I
Amen.
think that I encountered too many people that don't, and they're like, "Well, I have to do this because." Anytime you tell me I have to do this because I just check out and let you finish because you're doing what you want to do. Whether you realize it or not, trying to convince me that you're doing the same thing I'm doing and you're not. You are doing what you want to do.
Yeah,
And that's
no,
fine. I don't have a problem with it.
I
I
was
don't slide
sketch.
it. I just don't like I'm not working all the time, even for myself. Again, as I said to you this week, always had this framing and like you've got so much life to live. We lose somebody early, oh my god, they had so much life to live. Like, who told you that? This is a short life. We all have very short lives,
Very short.
and so what I will not do is waste my time in this short life. I don't care what you say, I don't care what you think, and I don't give a damn what you read at church last week either. I don't give a damn about that. I don't care, because if you're going to use that to govern your short life, glorious. And then I guess I know, because in some instances y'all are planning for an afterlife that you really can't fathom, one that you don't know. That's not why we're here today.
Okay.
I digress.
But I do agree with you. I keep hearing, I was catching up on Bridgerton this weekend, and this theme of obligation kept coming up. And I'm like, no, I'm obligated to stay black and
And
even
die.
stay
That's
die.
what my mama said.
Yeah. And since she said it, I have lived by that. I am obligated to stay black and die. Nothing more, nothing less. and do what God tells me to do.
Black.
And even then, God and I be going toe to toe sometimes. But I also digress. We have a lot
God
of
understands that this is a short life. Like I know people used to say, like, God knows my heart. God knows that this is a short life.
and I want to
Again,
live it
when
well.
you when somebody has told you that God said something to them about you, please look back at them and say, well, go back to God and have him alert me of that information.
Yeah,
Don't
when
need
someone
you.
tells you something God says to you, it should be confirmation, or you should at least get confirmation from God. I'm gonna leave that where that's at because that'll take us into a whole other thing. All right, let's get into our topics for today. So, Texas. Texas has passed a couple of things. The first one, well, one of them being that they have gone through and passed a bill that will make it harder for Harris County. So, Harris County has a mayoral election. I think it's this week. Um, but essentially, the Texas governor was sent a bill to abolish the chief election position in Harris County. Why is this important? So, Harris County already had some election issues, we'll say, for lack of a better way to say it, with access to ballots, different power issues, things of that nature that made it harder in their last elections. So essentially, the GOP controlled legislature is trying to take those issues and say we just need to eliminate this position overall. Then the responsibility and the oversight for the elections will go to the county tax assessor, and I think the commissioner. I'll get that info in a minute. Anyway, it's not going to be a sole chief elections position that would basically do oversight for the election. So this is important because this could cause even more confusion for the election that they have coming up, which they don't need. If you already have a county that was experiencing issues with access to the ballot or paper ballot shortages or delayed poll openings, changing or eliminating a position right before an election is only going to make that worse. So I'm not sure. Actually, let me not say I'm not sure why you would do that. I am sure why you would do that because I live in Georgia. But what do you think about this? This seems to be part of a sweeping pattern that's happening in the South, where access to ballots or different tactics to interfere in election processes continues to happen and occur. Now, this would not affect the upcoming mayoral election. Allegedly, it wouldn't take effect until September 1st. Um, but what to move election oversight to the tax assessor and it's the county clerk, that just doesn't make sense to me. It makes about as much sense to me as it made for some of the similarities between SB 202 and some of the other legislation that I've seen across the South with election efforts being impeded or access to ballots being impeded. You sent me something that different that New York is doing and said, I hope they're doing this in the South. And my response to you over the weekend was, now you already know the response to that. They're not. They're not going to implement more digital uh, methods in elections because their argument is, well, if we open it up to digital methods, any type of digital methods, then it opens our process up to more election fraud and hacking, essentially.
I mean, so I understand that obviously a couple of things there. I think you're I guess the way to say it, when you talk Texas and you know, I don't know what my question is, what didn't you understand about history?
Yeah.
And that's why I keep going. Like I'm willing to discuss Texas. I'm willing to discuss the South. I understand that burnout is real. I also want you to understand that this is your state. Like these people are not like your private employers. They're
Right.
people that you put there. They're
Right.
people that can be removed. There are things that you can do.
Yes.
Now I know that you're waiting on that organization to do it or somebody to give you guidance, or you want to play it safe, or you don't want to offend nobody, or you're trying to get like, I don't care. Whatever it is that you're putting before your livelihood, that's something for you to deal with. And I think all we can do is really give you that information. When I think Texas and I think about the South and I think about like, you're like everyone says, and even some of these governors like DeSantis are saying things like, we don't need to talk about certain parts of history because people know it. That's stupid. We don't need to talk about history because we want to talk about our way. I said to you before, I believe that while colonizers did a number on the Native Americans in this country, they did a number on the people, enslaved people that they brought with them. They continue to do a number on all of our, on most minds.
Right.
Meaning what we did, we'll do again. We can change it. We'll erase it again. When it comes to basic things like slavery, you can say what you want to say. I'm a descendant of these people, which means that my urges and inclinations and things that I have, they had as well. So why are you telling me that all these enslaved people just minded their business and did what they was told to do? To a certain extent, I understand how mind control works, and I understand being subservient. I understand how that happened. I also know that some of these enslaved mammies dropped Joe babies on the head. I know that some of these enslaved mammies kill. I was trying to be nice and said drop the baby on the head. Some of these enslaved mammies kill, and I feel like it's not dangerous for us to talk about the past. We're saying this like
It shouldn't be.
It's not. It's not. How is it dangerous for us to talk about the past?
I'm saying I agree with you. I think it shouldn't be, but I do think that there are certain parties and forces that are trying to make it dangerous to talk about the past. They're trying to outlaw talking about the past.
In certain schools, in certain spaces. But what's preventing you from doing it in your home or your social club called church? Like, why aren't y'all talking about it there? You're talking about everything else, and everybody talking about bathrooms and access to bathrooms and who should be going to the bathroom when you have unisex bathrooms in your house. Conversation over. The people that go to the bathroom in your house all go to the same one. Mamas and daddies and brothers and sisters, theys and them. They are all there. So you can stop talking about that, trying to figure that out. Why don't you talk about what really happened? And so your people can know who they are, right? I think it's important for us to have those conversations and kind of lead with those conversations. Otherwise, certain things continue to happen. Like Texas and Florida are interesting dichotomies, but they are not the whole country.
They are not the whole country. And I think that because it's so loud right now, it's making it sound like it's the whole country. It really isn't. They're just loud and wrong. Because I know Texas also followed Florida in outlawing DEI initiatives and conversations, if I'm not mistaken. And so, like,
well, Texas is getting ready to become the largest state in the country to eliminate all funding of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at public universities, which Florida already did.
That is crazy to me. Like, and
what's crazy to me is that is not really pissing people off.
Because a lot of people, one, I don't think it's being talked about enough. And two, I tying into what we just said, that this is a more of a minority than a majority. Yes, Texas is the largest state will become the largest state to pass this kind of initiative, for lack of a better way to say it. I really don't even want to use that word. But then you hear the argument of, we live in a post-racial society. The Supreme Court has been tearing down different rights across the board, particularly in voting rights and things of that nature, because they're saying, oh, we don't really need these protections anymore. That is a lie, clearly, because now once you get rid of these protections, voting rights, abortion access, Roe v. Wade, things of that nature, then you open it up for the states to make the changes. And that's why we're starting to see sweeping changes in access to healthcare and rights and DEI initiatives. We are not past having these conversations, and we're not past the need for these initiatives to take place. And so what they're doing is they are passing these very ambiguously worded laws and bills to say, oh, well, we're going to open it up for the different counties and municipalities to govern themselves how they want to, or we're going to take this power back. Those are the top two methods that I'm seeing happening in the South right now when it comes to these things, like getting rid of DEI in Texas or in Florida in public universities. They're either ambiguously wording it to allow counties and school officials and things like that to make their own decisions, or they're taking the power back and putting it in the hands of their GOP controlled state legislature or governor's office or a handful of folks. And so,
Well, and I think some of it is ambiguous and some of it is bold.
yeah,
We're removing inclusion, diversity, and equity programs. That's bold as hell. That's
yeah,
bold as hell. And using the Supreme Court to justify takes me back to the point I feel like I've been making for a week. There are places where, again, you have a short life. We are all living these short lives. And so for you to be bottlenecked, to be in one place at one time, because that's the only place that, and I understand fighting for your home and fighting for your rights. But let's get back to the Supreme Court that was protecting all of these things. They say, well, we're going to give it back to states. And then you happen to live in a state that says, oh, we're going to do this, while the state next door to you isn't doing that. I'm not saying don't fight, but I'm saying if you aren't going to fight boldly, shut up. Because you can move. Like, this is not 1865. You can go.
yeah,
So if you're not going to stay and fight and you're going to stay and complain, and it took me a while to get to where I wanted to get to so that I could orate this properly, because I believe in justice. I believe in fighting for rights. I don't believe in you ignoring history or being willfully ignorant and being falsely upset and faux outrage when you were silent.
yeah.
Silent complicitly because you wanted to do something else. Well, I wanted to sit on my porch and drink my sweet tea, and I'm just going to let them figure it out. Okay.
Who's them?
Then
And why
you
doesn't them
probably need to
include
plan
you?
to go drink your sweet tea in another state that is protecting you,
Right.
because you're at risk. And I think that the risk is so great that to ignore it, to say, oh, well, they're going to fix it. They are unfixing it. It was
Literally.
fixed. They're unfixing it, and they're doing it day in and day out in states where I know there are people that are louder than the small populated of uneducated people. One interesting thing, we talked about Amanda Gorman last week,
Mm-hmm.
and she defended her poem, but there was the mother that actually and I was reading this about the mother that complained about the poem. She was somebody that was at Proud Boy rallies. She had previously posted anti-Semitic memes online. The parent was first identified by the Miami Herald. And one of the things that she said was that she had not read the poem.
Right.
She didn't know what they were teaching. She was just a concerned parent.
And
for
because
me,
of the
my
law
Black
passed
brothers
in
and
Florida, it went
sisters,
through.
are you not concerned parents?
Right.
Because it would seem that you're not. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. For so long, we sat and died. Maybe the complacency is, aside from ignorance, is fear. And that fear can't keep you in your seat. I know that we were told that the civil rights movement was in the 60s, and we didn't think that we would have our own. But this is the moment. This is happening right now. This is happening in your state. Your kids are being educated by people that don't even like them.
Whew.
And then I don't know what you're doing while these other parents are up at the school board demanding that they don't talk about your kids' Black history. I've said before, I remember being in 5th grade. Like, coming from a tone deaf society. In 5th grade, we had like a potluck. We were going to have a potluck for all the countries that we're from. And the teacher was like, everyone bring in dishes from where you're from. Call your grandma tonight, call granddad and get a recipe. And like, she was so excited. Like, well, my people were slaves. I know that I'm the only black kid in this class, and she's taken aback that I'm even going to say that. But again, like, oh, I don't want my kid to know about Ruby Bridges. Ruby Bridges was a child when this happened to her. So what sense does it make? So for us to be on the other side and just sit there and be like, oh, well, somebody's going to take care of it. Who is that somebody? Because you won't have the luxuries forever.
Right. Yeah,
I'm really passionate about ignorance. I just it just rubs me the wrong way.
I really want to encourage, and this is not the only story that we have today where we will be doing this, but again, we will continue to encourage you, get involved in your community. And this, of course, is not the conversation about those of you who already are, but convince those who are around you or in your community or in your neighborhood or at your church or in your organization or whatever to also get involved. Because this, again, is happening right in your community. Another mass shooting occurred in Florida this weekend, and Florida became a permitless carry state in April. And now there was a mass shooting that injured 9 people who are all said to be in stable condition in Florida, which thank God, because it could have been a lot worse, but it could have been a lot worse because of the bills that have been being passed. Now, on the flip side of this, you look at Michigan, where Governor Whitmer just passed they're the 21st state to pass a red flag law or extreme risk protection order law, essentially, that allows mental professionals, family members, police, roommates, or former dating partners, or different community members to petition a judge to remove firearms from those who are believed to be an imminent threat to themselves or to others. The 21st state, mind you, the Justice Department handed out over $230 million to states to pass these red flag laws because of the number of mass shootings that we have had in this year alone, the last couple of weeks alone. And so when you're looking at these things like that, which states were accepted the help from the federal government? Some of these states are offered the assistance, but they deny it or decline it or send it back. Some states are get the money, but use it to do other. Let me not say that. Some states get the money and their red flag law does not include as many provisions or anything like that. And so looking at stuff like this again, get involved. Figure out, is your state a red flag state, or does it lean more into an open carry state? Or does it lean more into let your local municipalities and county officials decide what is at your church, what is at your organization? When you enter buildings in your community, does it say you cannot have a gun in this store? A lot of stores don't have that, but some stores, even their corporate office, regardless of if their headquarters is in your state or not, will put on their door, you are not permitted to carry a weapon on this property because they are permitted to do that. And so this is how you get involved. You look and pay attention to what is happening in your state. Has your state passed a red flag law? That includes, again, Michigan is the 21st state. So that's not even half of this nation that we have gotten to be able to pass these kind of laws. But think about it. A lot of the mass shootings that have happened, it has been where family members or community members or school teachers or someone was saying, someone's got to watch this person. Something is going to happen. We are going to have an issue. Like, they tried to sound the alarm in a lot of these cases, but nothing was done. And not because local law enforcement didn't want to do anything necessarily. In a lot of these situations, they couldn't. They didn't have the laws or the protections that enabled them to actually do something about it. Meanwhile, this year we've had more than 200 mass shootings across the United States. It is May 30th. We have had over 200 mass shootings this year alone. That is insane. And this is something that we can change as a community, as a people, if we hold our local officials responsible, if we elect the
You know
people
what?
to make these changes.
You know, we have these conversations and then these thoughts come to me. What you just said is this is something that can change. My question to you, and my question to you, the viewer, listener, aside from this conversation, when's the last time you had the conversation that Tiff and I are having?
Yeah.
Because what I'm saying is, like we said last week, it's literally not about you going and signing up to run to be your state representative, okay? Nobody's asking you to go get a new wig and a new suit and do that. I'm not doing that. I'm just asking you to talk about this with somebody like my group of friends. We talk about this stuff. Some things I'm public about the things we talk about. Some things, I mean, I've been public enough, like, not only will I have residence elsewhere, I don't want to be John Lewis. You say that, and people at one point, you know, like, I'm like, oh, that's so, you can't say that, you can't, no. At one point, John, I use him all the time as an example because I've used him for so long. I would walk in traffic for John Lewis. I would do something like that. However, John Lewis also lived at the time where it was pretty much the same everywhere.
Yeah.
So he's fighting this fight. And he thought he had fought it. He thought he had fought the good fight. And things are changing. And the illusion that they're not is like, you've got a 30% of people of the GOP that is diehard Trump supporters. They are so loud, they obstruct, but you have an obstructionist party in the GOP. So you have all the obstructors, then 30% of them that go for Trump. The rest of us, I get it, don't want to be bothered. I don't want to talk about this every day. I don't want to talk about Trump. And that's the thing. That part of it is I don't talk about it with my friends because I don't want this negativity. I don't want to have to feel like this. I don't want to have this conversation. I get that part of it too. So you have this interesting dichotomy where it could appear that people don't care, but people are just tired. Like the war that they're fighting, you know, and to keep the lights on in their family is a more significant, you know, or in the homes, in their family, or whatever the case may be, is more important to them than some drudged up culture war that some lunatic lady from Georgia is making up and talking about space lasers and shit coming from the sky. Like these are two different worlds fighting, and that goes back to the whole argument that the country is way too big. I know that. I mean, I grew up in Georgia. I've got family in very rural areas in the country, but it wasn't until I drove through rural Pennsylvania that I asked myself, what in the hell do these people need to be making laws for people in New York City for? If your closest neighbor is 5 miles away, you could pretend the laws don't apply to you. You know what I'm saying? So for you to trying to control something or to make something, you know, America has turned from its Christian ways. America was never a Christian nation. It never was.
It was never intended to be a Christian nation either.
It never was our founding documents. It was never intended to be, and it wasn't.
Right.
Wiggy Washington was not, you know, out here.
Did you call him Wiggy Washington?
Wiggy. He was not, you know, out here declaring the 10 Commandments on Plymouth Rock. He wasn't doing that. Like, that's not what was going on. And they knew that this could not be a part of it. Why? Mostly because Christian narrative change. They shift with the time. Like what the Christians are concerned about, first of all, the whole country is not going to be concerned about, but you've got a Christian nationalist, like as they're claiming to be, that I don't ever see the Christian part, but not that that matters, because that's just, they say that they're leading this way and that, and it's just a hodgepodge of confusion at this point that I can't say I don't understand, right? So I come from it from two angles. Like I want people to be passionate about it, but I can get why you wouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned John Lewis, and we're talking about a legend in the civil rights movement who was arrested he was placed in handcuffs at least 45 times. And I agree with you. I would have done anything for him. He was my late representative. And also, I don't want to have to be arrested 45 times. I don't want to have handcuffs placed on me 45 times just to get the change and the rights that should be due to me because I live here. It should not be a
In
privilege.
my short life, it's not gonna
I don't
happen.
want to do that. Again, he did that in an effort to make it so that we wouldn't have to do that. So you shouldn't want to be John Lewis because he went through things in an effort to make sure that we didn't have to go through them. Him
You
and
sound
people
like you
like
understand
C.T.
my struggle,
Vivian,
my sister.
huh?
I said you sound like you understand my struggle, my sister.
I do. I really do. And as someone who does my best in doing, on the ground organizing and activism, I still stand by that. I do not want to have handcuffs placed on me. Yes, I plan to cause good trouble wherever I am, whether I'm living on this stolen land or on another land, which I do plan to do at some point, maybe sooner rather than later. But I should not have to be arrested over 40 times, at least 45 times, because I'm fighting for the rights of people that we should have had these rights. And some of them we did have, and now they're being stripped away. I think that in the year 2023, too many people have fought, bled, and died and worked tirelessly in this nation on this stolen land to get us the rights and the privileges that are afforded to us. Those that were, even if you are Black and brown in this or poor, because be clear, the founding documents were not necessarily for the poor either. But we have made changes and amendments. We have governed ourselves for the last couple of decades and centuries so that we could have rights afforded to us. And now you're doing things like stripping funding for DEI in public universities and not passing. Every state should have a red flag law. This is not hard. It's not rocket science. Over 200 mass shootings, including in schools, that are killing our children and our babies. It should be a no-brainer that every state in this nation has a red flag law. So the fact that Michigan is only the 21st to have it sounds insane to me. So no, I agree with you. I would have done anything for John Lewis, but we should not
That
want to
sounds like a joke to me.
should
And
not
Michigan
have.
just passed a red flag law, and Florida said you don't need a permit.
But again, over 200 mass shootings. And y'all are still, Kansas NRA affiliate just said that they didn't need any gun laws over there, that it was ridiculous, and that the gun activists are loud and wrong, essentially, is what they said. No, no. At this point, I don't understand why we are not holding the NRA and others accountable. And I'm not talking about anyone's right to carry. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is you do not need an AR-15 in your house. That should not be available to the public. Weapons like that should not be available to the public. We need common sense laws. We need red flag.
We need to be loud in our neighborhoods because it's
We
not
need
us.
to be
Some of us,
loud.
we've got some. Yes, there are some AR-15s scattered around the community. Most of them ending up in our community are planted there, or they're intentional. Right? There's an intentional there, but there are AR-15s with those beige people that have moved in next door to you, and those people are stocking up.
Yep.
That doesn't need to be happening. Like if I lived in one of them cul-de-sacs that y'all are down there living in, I would not want my neighbor, all the neighbors around me. Oh, well, we serve the Lord, and we got the sword of the Spirit, and you are in here protected with your sword of the Spirit while your neighbors have lined their arsenals.
Literally.
Their basement is full of AR-15s and all types of weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, but also
there are more guns than
with your neighbors, because you need to know. I know every neighbor that I have that is at least within the surrounding few houses to me. And I do that, and we are intentional about that because it's just needed. And so when I think about those conversations, and you're right, you mentioned this a little bit earlier in the show. When's the last time that you were having the conversation we're having right now with your friends, with your community, at your clubs, in your organizations, at your job? I know we were raised in a time that you're not supposed to have politically incorrect or charged conversations at work, but ask them questions. What does Bob sit next to you believe? Does he vote according to the Bible? And if so, what does that look like? Because my interpretation of the Bible is probably completely different from your interpretation of the Bible. My
You
Bible
can't
says that
vote
Jesus
according. I mean,
flipped
you could
tables,
vote
and your
according to
Bible
the
might say
Bible.
that LGBTQ living is incorrect. We're not reading the same thing. We're not interpreting that the same. And so when you look at somewhere like I know tomorrow we're going to talk about Uganda passing this anti-LGBTQ legislation that if you are even seen participating in same-sex activities, you're going to jail, you're going to prison. And so when you're looking at things like that, yes, the response could be, and you're looking at things like over 200 mass shootings in the US when people in London or Europe aren't having that issue because they do have gun laws. Yes, the response could be, let me just move and get off of this land. And I think that is a valid response. And also, what happens to the baby that then it gets shot in another mass shooting next week because we didn't stay and fight? And I'm not saying the fight is for everyone. And I still stand by we shouldn't need to be arrested over 45 times to make change. But there's got to be a balance. There's got to be some balance of, we both talked about, we did what we wanted to do this weekend. We did that because we also know we were going to have this conversation today. We're going to have another conversation tomorrow and another one after that. I don't want to be talking about mass shootings in the next 10 years because we still didn't do what we needed to do, whether we're on this land or another one. America has a problem. Okay. We have a lot of problems. Gun laws is one of them. Not allowing people to have the rights that should be afforded to them as humans, not as black, brown, red, green, yellow, gay, straight, whatever, but as humans, as human beings. We have a responsibility to inject compassion and love and peace and rights and equity into our society. And that's just not present.
It's really not.
We are operating at a deficit of all of those things in this nation. And now you say you were passionate about ignorance, and I am too. But I am sick of us Alex, you and I have been having the same conversations for the last 15 years on one medium or another, and not just us. I'm an old soul. I watch the Golden Girls. I know you do too. A lot of people in our generation do. Watching shows like the Golden Girls today, that should not have aged as well as it did. And the conversations that are happening on that show that really was a little bit beyond before its time should not be just as relevant today as it was then. That is a problem.
They were sounding the same alarms on the GOP then.
They were sounding the same alarms on the GOP.
Boldly on network TV when there was only 4 channels.
When you had to go up to the TV and literally you had 2 knobs, the channel and the volume, and you had to turn the knob to get to one of the 5 channels that you could get to that didn't have static on it. The conversations and the fights and the struggles that were happening then should not.
It's the picking and choosing. It's the picking and choosing, right?
Yeah.
And it is the goal here is to wake you up. This is an alert for you to wake up. So this ain't new. I was watching footage this weekend of Reagan and Nixon talking about marijuana and how it's the most harmful drug that has ever hit the lands of the United States of America. And they are going on and on and on and on about how, knowing the truth, they also play to ignorance, right? So they know, and you too know if you're ignorant. I'm not calling you stupid. I'm not calling you dumb. I'm saying you know when you don't know. Right. You know when you don't know, so then you presume to know when something sounds like something you should know.
Right.
They are great at code, and what we are going to do is decode. So I think we're going to do a segment called Decoding. It's not, I follow this account called Decoding Fox News, but it really needs to be decoding them fuckers, okay? That's what it should be called. For a long time, and I said this, we were talking about a clip that you and I were discussing this 7 years ago. about a whole nother president. All the same
Was it
things.
that
We're saying
long
the
ago?
same things. That was 7 years ago. 7 years ago. A clip clear as day. But my point here is that it's all manufactured outrage. And 7 years ago, you detected first of all, even no matter what they do, like there's always going to be stories on the left and on the right that say the GOP has the attention of black men. The same people putting out this bullshit are saying the same people that are saying that the black man is not at home. But you believe that. You see how fast disinformation spreads? You can pinpoint right now how many times you've had a conversation about black men not being this, black men not being home. And then you have always had that conversation. I say this knowing this. I say this full-throated, knowing you've never had this conversation with the facts, because the facts say that the black man is at home. Just like it says the facts show that the GOP, if they are polling with more black people, it's like 1%.
Right.
It's not going to get over that. Usually we can sniff them out because it's like you start talking some, I was like, where's your mama?
Right.
They start talking crazy. You could recognize them because the black ones don't get black haircuts. They go to great clips. You know they have no hairline. There's no, we can point you out. Ben Carson, Paris Denard, Larry Elder. They went and found this jungle boy from Florida, Byron Donald's hairline. You know, he talks smooth. And he's like, you know, we sick of y'all. And he's all the blackisms, right? It's the blackisms. Don't let the blackisms get your ass caught up. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Please, I beg of you. Please. Right. If you don't know, just don't be like, well, there was, you know, the economy wasn't as bad. Inflation wasn't that high when Donald Trump was in there. Like, the inflation is high in the whole world. It's not just happening in the United States, but also inflation is man-made, right? It's something that bacon really doesn't cost $14. It just doesn't.
It's expensive.
No way that you slice it, do 12 eggs cost $10.
Right.
Not when you can literally go get your own damn chicken and wait. And that's not. I lived in Brooklyn, in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn. 2 blocks from me, this lady had like 10 chickens in this coop in her front yard. I'll tell you a story that was about the friend that just really ain't shit, that should not, has dangling Popeyes in front of that chicken. Like, you see your cousins? It's crazy people, right? But they chickens in the front yard in Brooklyn. Front yard in Brooklyn even sounds crazy.
But you got to do what you got to do.
Point.
You got to do what you got to do.
To that point, don't get caught up in the isms.
Right.
And I know how we fall for a brunch and some food. Do not get caught up in the isms. Right. That slick ass party is really not, and I am not telling you to be a Democrat either. I'm not saying that. Right. I think you should be independent with your vote and your mind. Absolutely. And I think you should listen. I think you should listen. Sides. But when you listen, know that you could be played if you don't know. By all sides. Because they are also telling you to listen. Assuming that you're ignorant. Assuming that you don't do any research. Assuming that, like, make these tools your friend. Yeah. We can go beyond Google now. We'll teach you how to do that. We'll have a special tech session this week to show you how to make sure you think, because they're starting to pass it in blue states. They now have a media literacy course that they have to take before they graduate from high school. Using sources like Fox News, can you point the lie? Can you point out the lie? Yeah. Yeah. I think Michigan, Illinois, I'm not sure who else I have to double check on the states that are passing that as required curriculum. While Florida is saying, we don't need to teach Black history. Jesus, fix it. Think forward, guys. Think about, don't think about just right now. Your kid that you're raising in Florida is not going to have a fighting chance.
Yeah,
It's
no.
it's not gonna have a fighting chance. And you think it's funny, it's cute, we live on the beach. Oh, we ain't paying taxes down here in Florida. I don't pay attention to DeSantis. It doesn't affect me. Oh, it's affecting
It
you, it's
does.
affecting your children, it's affecting your community. And that's the goal. They want you to believe that it's not affecting you.
Right. Absolutely. Which, speaking of effect, I wanted to hit this really quick before we go to another candidate that has entered the presidential primary. South
Oh,
Carolina
I can't wait for that.
South Carolina on Thursday did the governor of South Carolina did sign the bill to pass the very limited and limiting. I'm not going to call it a 6-week abortion ban because it's actually when a fetal heartbeat is detected, which is usually around 6 weeks. But South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster did sign that bill into law. It goes into effect immediately. Planned Parenthood, along with another organization and 2 physician plaintiffs, are suing, trying to fight this legislation. But right now, it essentially has impacted the entire region because South Carolina was really that mainstay state where you could still have uh, access to abortions after 6 weeks. And now that's no longer the case. There are exceptions for 12 weeks with rape and incest. You have up to 12 weeks, or if it's to save the patient's life, the mother's life, or the birth giving person's life, or for fetal illnesses or issues or complications. But South Carolina was the last state pretty much in the South, particularly in the Southeast, where women and birth giving persons could go to the state to get abortion access or reproductive care post 6 weeks. That's now not the case. So, again, though it may not have happened in your state, if you don't live in South Carolina, if you know someone that is in the Southeast, it's impacting the entire region. So, again, y'all, don't just pay attention to what's happening in your local community, but also pay attention to what's happening in your region because different things can impact you in different ways. Florida again passed the DEI initiative where they weren't going to fund DEI initiative or programs in public universities anymore, and now Texas has passed a similar law. And so these states are looking at other states to see what they're getting away with and what they can get away with in their state. Pay attention, y'all. Pay attention, have these conversations, but not just have these conversations, mobilize yourselves. Mobilize yourselves, mobilize your communities. Don't wait for you, Alex. You mentioned you're waiting for the organizations. Don't do that. Do not wait for these organizations or even hold these organizations accountable. Before I worked for a particular organization, I was actually on social media dragging them and not in a disrespectful way, but just really like, hi, I am on your website. Where are the volunteer opportunities? How can I be involved? And was like just trying to get out into the community to different organizations. I'm not understanding and seeing where the opportunities of engagement are. So if you do want to tie yourself to an organization or a nonprofit in your state or in your local community, but you're not finding ways to do it, contact them. Contact your local representative and say, here's an issue I'm passionate about. How can I be involved? What can I do? Do you have recommendations for organizations who are doing this work? Do you have lobbyists that you talk to about this particular issue? What are you doing about this particular issue? Get your community together. If there's a certain bill or something you want to see passed, get a certain number of people in your community together, draft up what the requirements are that you want to do, take it to your local representative and or your commissioner or whomever, depending on what the issue is, and say, here's the change that we want to see. Now, what do we need to do to get this implemented? There are different levels and degrees of ways that you can mobilize yourself in your community, regardless of what the issue is, but you have to do it. You have to do it. You have to do the research. You have to do the work. Or, as Alex mentioned earlier, leave, but we would much prefer you mobilize. Or
Well,
do
and
both.
to follow up to your statement, like you say, get a bill passed, and even that could be intimidating. But it's simple things like that stoplight that people be running all the time, and you like, well, I don't understand in them other neighborhoods, they can get a stoplight put up, they can get, and you're just so can you,
So can
so
you.
can you. Your local representative, that information is available. Well, I think we should probably do something to tell you how to find those in your respective areas, but not just your states, but local. Like whoever the mayor is. Atlanta, and I hate that y'all are set up like this. Y'all have like 50 mayors. Like, so there's not just
You're not wrong. You're
Dunwoody,
really
there's a
not
different
wrong.
mayor. Sandy Springs, there's a different mayor. DeKalb County has
Has
a
a
CEO.
CEO.
Decatur has a mayor. And all of you people live in Metro Atlanta, and Andre Dickens is not your mayor.
Right.
Andre Dickens is the mayor of 499,000 people. That's it. And that is crazy. But that's also a design to strip power from a very powerful Black electorate. And some of you are hearing this for the first time this way. You never considered it. It's like, oh, I've had people call me. I've lived here for a long time now. Still calling me like, I live in Jonesboro. So I was trying to vote for the mayor. You need to find out who the mayor of Jonesboro is. If you want to vote for the mayor of Atlanta, you're going to have to move to Atlanta proper. Other states aren't set up like that, but they might be. So That's why it's important for you to be informed, right? You can, the little things, you don't have to wait on them. The proverbial to make the change. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, I do want to share one resource really quick. You mentioned folks looking up their representatives. Ballotpedia is one that just always springs to the top of my mind. It shows you who your local representation is. It will show you the makeup of your state legislature. It will show you different bills. It will show you different voting records. It will show you all kinds of things. So Google state representation, and you can figure it out that way. Google is very smart because technology has moments where it's very smart. It will detect what state you are in. So you can either write Georgia state representation or just state representation, and it'll come up with different things. You can also use Ballotpedia. You can also look at different sources for your state. For example, my state, I live in Georgia, as I continue to unfortunately say, but Georgia has georgia.gov. If I am trying to look at anything that's elections, my website here is mvp.ga.sos.gov because it's under the Secretary of State. Look up what your state elections website is. All of that is public information, is the point. Public information is available to you literally at the drop of a Google search. So just search whatever it is that you are interested in, whether it's climate justice, reproductive justice in your area, how many hospitals have closed in your state, what are the bills that were passed, whether some legislative sessions are still happening in different states. If your legislative session has ended, and by legislative, let me say what that is. Legislative session means when your state representatives meet to pass policy and bills in your state. Some are longer than others, some are shorter than others. You can find out that information. You can find out what they're talking about. You can go sit in the meetings. A lot of people don't know that. You can go sit in these meetings. You can go sit in the gallery of your state capitol and listen to the conversations and debates. Each capitol has different rules and regulations. Go sit in there and listen. The point is, figure out what you are passionate about. And that may be everything until you can narrow it down. But figure that out, do the work of figuring that out, but work through the exhaustion. We're going to have to, as a community and as a society, work through the exhaustion with our government and I can't say that. We're going to have to work through the exhaustion, and we're going to have to do the work to make the change we want to see, be the change we want to see, or we're going to just have to deal with what's happening and move and leave, and just let the chips fall where they may. But if you want to see the change in your community's probably waiting for you to be that change. Okay, there is a new candidate in the presidential primary that has entered. She is a familiar name because she was in the last election as well. She did not make it.
She announced like a month ago.
I know, but so did a couple other people.
I don't feel like she said anything relevant to this weekend. And this is just a personal bias.
I don't think she said anything. Let me back up. The she that we are referring to is author Marianne Williamson, who has gained attention for different things, but she garnered more attention after she entered the last presidential race. And so now she has re-entered as of a month ago. She's starting to make her rounds. You can definitely tell she's had some different training and a different team this time. She didn't necessarily say anything relevant to the weekend. She did say some things, though, that I think are important conversations. So we can talk about that uh, um, tomorrow. And again, we're going to talk about Uganda, and we're going to talk about the debt ceiling negotiations. I won't say they're done because they still have to be discussed in each of the chambers and go through the rules committee. So they are supposed to begin discussing and voting on that tomorrow. So we'll talk more about that as well. We'll go through what it looks like, but they still have to have the discussion. So it might be some adjustments. Both sides are kind of on the fence. Some are saying, "Oh, this was a compromise," and some are saying, "Oh, my answer is no." We'll have all those conversations tomorrow. Alex, anything else you wanted to say?
Nope.
I think we have said enough. Get
I
involved,
think we
y'all.
have.
Get involved. It's a lot happening in the world. It's a lot happening in communities. It's a lot happening in society. Get involved. Make sure that the rhetoric and the conversations you are having are your conversations, your independent thought after you have done your own research, your own digging, your own reading. Don't just hear what certain folks are saying on media channels, including us. Take what we say and go research it for yourself. Go look it up. But don't just take conversations, and I mean this for the church too. In your church and in your society, don't just take something that one person says and run with it, because next thing you know, you might be spewing white nationalism rhetoric and you don't even know it. So,
Be slow to speak.
and quick to listen and research. Be slow to speak, quick to listen, and quick to research. Have these conversations in your community, in your home, in your clubs, in your organizations, in your church, whatever the case may be. We will see you here tomorrow with more conversations. Again, I'm Tiffanie Lanelle, and you can get in touch with me at Tiff Lanelle on Instagram. I'm transitioning off of the Musky Bird app, so.
I'm Alex Unmuted on Yapper as well.
Yep.
And that's how you do it.
And that's how you do it. We'll catch y'all tomorrow. Peace. Be safe.
Okay, let's do it again tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Adios.
Right.